Devaluation is inevitable in Botswana because the value of what you produce and export is going down. So there is a difference between devaluation as just a reflection of your economy, your assets. There is an inevitability about it.
We are again back at the aspect of the economy. Some of you might say, why are we overplaying the economy? This is the biggest topic in Botswana right now. And today we would like to approach it from someone who's sitting outside Botswana so that we can get a different perspective. So let's welcome Nick Charalambides, or Bids. It's a struggle to pronounce it, but we're doing it properly now. So Nick, welcome.
Thank you, and a real pleasure to be here. I think from an economic orthodoxy perspective, looking at the fiscal situation, it is severe. Your government is going to be an absolutely crucial aspect of where you go and how far you go. And look, an investment will be needed. For you to grow, you will need investment, and much of that will have to come from government. But that's very different to borrowing money to pay wages. Are you looking after the manufacturing and the service leaders that you currently have? And there is a resounding not really. We spoke earlier about sort of the response of the companies that we interviewed. When I asked them, if you were to start again, would you establish in Botswana right now? And I can't remember one saying yes.
Really?
Welcome to the GrowthWell Podcast, where we tap into a well of knowledge, innovation, and leadership to fuel Africa's growth. Here, we explore thought-provoking insights and expert knowledge that empower individuals and businesses to thrive across the continent. Whether it's personal development or professional advancement, our conversations inspire action and impact. This is GrowthWell, where ideas flow and growth begins. Let's dive in.
Okay, hi everyone. This is GrowthWell Podcast. This time we are coming through online. It's about time. This is our first online recording, so quite an amazing development for us because we have our guest who's sitting somewhere in Cyprus, so he'll tell us more about it. But otherwise, we are again back at the aspect of the economy. Some of you might say, why are we overplaying the economy? And like I said last time, the economy is stupid. This is the biggest topic in Botswana right now. And today we would like to approach it from someone who's sitting outside Botswana so that we can get a different perspective. As you know, Africa sits at the bottom of a lot of statistics in terms of economy, in terms of social development and so forth. And Botswana has been one of the biggest hopes by economists global. So it's quite important to get the view of those people who are sitting outside to say, are we a disappointment or is not all lost? So let's welcome Nick Charalambides, or Bids. It's a struggle to pronounce it, but we're doing it properly now. So Nick, welcome. Welcome to
the... Thank you, and a real pleasure to be here. Thank you for that. So by way of introduction, Nick Charalambides.
Okay.
So not bad. My background, for about 30 plus years, I've been working in, on, or around the African continent. They're originally from London in the UK. First job was in Kenya in 1989. So I've seen a lot of change.
Okay.
And I'd say, lived in Botswana for 9 years. Between 2003 and 2011. But my work ranged from everything from Angola through to Ethiopia, South Sudan, a lot of work in Rwanda, Mauritius. I think I have been on pretty over 30 countries on the continent, I believe. And my area has been really, I've been specializing in trade, and in particular how trade has an impact on sustainable development. How can you boost your trading relations to enhance your value chains and really drive employment and growth. And just finished a study looking at Botswana from a sustainable development perspective and trade. Okay, for the FCBO. Very relevant for the topic. And so that currently I'm sitting in Nicosia, Cyprus for a few months. I am hot.
Nicosia, is that the capital?
Nicosia, Nick. That's the capital. And again, but sort of normally I'm based in Cape Town. But as I say, work across the continent. Okay. Thank you very much.
No, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. And you run a consulting firm called Imana Development. How do you say it? Is it a money development?
So it's Imani Development. It's not quite as old as I am, but it's about 43 years old now. It started in Kenya, but it's now operates widely. But the Imani Development. Imani is a Swahili word for trust. And faith, so that's how we try and run our business, with integrity.
Oh, great.
I'm focusing on that.
Yeah, I think it's important to highlight that you're coming from a trade part of economics, which is quite important because for the topic today, especially around Botswana, that the biggest thing is the diversification, which we haven't done so well. So it will be very important for you in terms of contributions about Botswana's potential to leverage trade for its diversification drive. I think that will be important.
Well, absolutely. And one of the key focus areas of my work has been regional integration. And one of the challenges across the board for many of the smaller economies is realizing or being able to share resources, pool resources, because small economies, to be globally competitive, you can't only rely on yourself.
Yeah.
Your development in a small economy cannot be within your borders. It has to relate to how you interact with your sources of everything from inputs to skills to reaching customers. I couldn't agree with you more. But that, not only no man is an island, or no person is an island. We're all together.
Yeah. Before we get into the meat of it, Nick, I like to start on a light moment, just to share. And the light moment this time will be just to enlighten our audiences around the history of the GDP or GNP previously, where it came from. My little research, because as you might have noticed in some of the podcasts, I'm very interested in the well-being of people and the concept of happiness. Mm-hmm. And the gentleman who developed the concept of GDP in 1934, Simon Kuznets, I'm sure you probably picked it up from your studies. One thing that he cautioned the United States at the time was that GDP is a very narrow measure of well-being. And he was cautioning the legislators to say that there are other broader aspects of human well-being that had been excluded. And he was cautioning that we shouldn't. And my take, Nick, is that by and large, we have remained using GDP as the primary measure of countries' development at the expense of well-being. Where countries like Bhutan have actually modified to talk about GHI, which is Gross Happiness Index. And in the United Nations in 2012 declared that we need to broaden the definition of GDP to include holistic well-being. And why I do this, Nick, is because I think in Africa, where we're still at the early stage of development, I think we have a chance to correct it, to make sure they go along in parallel instead of just focusing on the economics. Because I've seen modernization and development where people get richer, but they don't necessarily get happier. So I'm just keen on your take on that one before you get into the topic of the night.
No, I mean, when teaching GDP national accounts, one of the things that you highlight is the fact that an economy that digs a hole and then fills a hole So you've actually achieved nothing, but that will still register on your GDP statistics because the activity is digging it up. So you're back to where you started, but you've been much more successful on GDP than your neighbor who's been sitting back, relaxing, watching you dig the hole and fill it in again. So I think that's it. And look, I think it's there are some significant issues with that are thorny in that relationship between even the hard economic facts. So, for example, what we saw during COVID was that our measures of GDP, didn't include resilience. The issues of even simple measures like your food security. These are things that we are embracing. I think are important, and certainly the inequality is becoming much clearer as an issue. I mean, when I was growing up as an economist, it was all about eradicating absolute poverty, and the issues of inequality was something we felt would wash out.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing a very, very fragmented world that is driven by these inequalities, not just between countries, but within countries. So I a lighter note, but I do think, crucial, and we have seen it in the last few years of how a simple measure of the economy does not tell you the story.
Absolutely.
So I couldn't agree.
And I know we can unpack that one, but that's a matter for another day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Nick, you are based in Cape Town. So on a lighter note, just tell us what's fun in Cape Town. What do you guys do there for fun? I know we discussed Kip last time, the guys going there for cycling and stuff like that. That's one of the more areas in Africa. What do you guys do there for fun?
Well, what could take me away from wonderful Botswana? Probably only Cape Town. So it's got you can hike up a mountain in the morning. You can be on the beach during the afternoon, and then be settled in a wine estate with the best food and the best wine in the evening. It is everything. It is all the cliches. I mean, there are still significant challenges there, but as a visitor, I don't know where you can beat it.
And it's no wonder it's always rated as one of the most beautiful cities in the world, isn't it? And the tourists just come here in droves every year.
It is, and I find South Africans to be wonderfully warm and welcoming.
I'm jealous, man. What about compared to Botswana?
Yeah. Botswana is far easier to find a home in. I was very much more at home in Gaborone than I am in Cape Town, but there are some good perks to being in Cape Town. You must come. I'll show you. We can drop the hikes and the beach, but the wine estates and the restaurant.
Absolutely. I'll give you a buzz when I come to Cape Town. I usually come down in November, so I'll give you a buzz.
You must.
Great stuff. Yeah, great stuff. Now, as a first going into this topic, Nick, one of the things that has affected us, some of us as professionals, some of us who've talked about Botswana, with chest out. I mean, I for many years I've been going to Canada and I studied in the UK, and it's been a 30 years of talking very good things about our country, especially the prudence around the economy. The foundation that you must have found when you came in the early 2000s that was laid by people like Cesar Zakama, President Masire, Mugai, and so forth in terms of that discipline, in terms of how they approach fiscal planning. Now, and Botswana was seen as this hope, as this really good news coming from Africa, from economists global-wise, whether it's IMF, World Bank, and so forth. So I'm just now... This seems to be on a slippery slope since last year, with the recession last year, and now we're still very very difficult conditions this year. So I'm just interested from your perspective to say, How are you guys seeing it from an economist lens, sitting in Cape Town or Nicosia in Cyprus? And how do you see it? And what does it feel from your I know that every subject has got a philosophy aspect of it. Now, from an economist philosophy, and I know that you studied, is it Cambridge or Oxford? So you know where
Oxford.
Yeah, Oxford. So I just like to start on a philosophical thing before we get into the technical nitty-gritties. How does it feel, especially with you having lived in Botswana in the past?
No, I think from an economic orthodoxy perspective, looking at the fiscal situation, it is severe. There can be no doubt that there are structural changes that require a response that changes the structure of everything from the size and the activities of government to what you have to support, your infrastructure expenditure. There is no doubt. You look at the projections for the fiscal revenue, you look at the stickiness of expenditure. There are some very, very hard decisions that have to be made, or actions. I would say there's not even a decision. The decision is clear. Government must scale back. How does it do it? The private sector must diversify. How does it do it? The decision is clear. It's the how. But I think there's a bigger, longer term picture that I think is also very important here. When I would come back from some of the countries I work in, and I would also be so proud of what Botswana had achieved. And I think that is something to bear in mind when you're looking at what we need to do. Botswana thrived when governance, basic infrastructure, education, putting in place a well-run economy in society, delivered economic growth. And I think about 20 years ago, you saw the limits of how good governance can actually contribute to an economy without going the next step. And I think that's really important. And if you do actually look back over the sort of the efforts in the mid to late 2000s of the big drive for growth to try and generate economic activity outside of government, outside of diamonds, they were big investments. Big efforts made. Did they work out? Well, we can discuss why they may not have or be muted. But I think so definitely there are no decisions. The decisions have been made. It's really how you adjust to the fact that you have to reduce the size of your government.
Yeah. I was reading somewhere about how, I think the public service in South Africa is about just over 1 million. And then in Botswana, it's about 150,000. So 155,000 public service in a 2.3 million economy. And you are about 1 million in a 65 million population. Or the debates in South Africa is that's just too much in South Africa. Yeah. And in Botswana is the same thing. And then also if you play in terms of ratios of public servants, productivity per public servant, Botswana doesn't fare very well. So as we said, these are the decisions that have to be made and made very fast to stop the bleeding.
To stop the bleeding. And also one of the things that was clear, if you're employing your brightest and best in government at a high salary, where is the raw material to build your private sector?
That's true.
And this is one of the things that again.
Yeah.
If you're going to restructure, unfortunately, you have to release resources from one part of the economy that can be used more productively elsewhere. Now that is job losses.
Yeah.
That's ugly, but it's true. If you have only a limited resource there of your talent, that has to be redirected.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that because, as you said, as you know, Botswana private sector is relatively small. And as you said, the bulk of the talent is sitting in the public service. So I always say, if you release these talented people who went to big schools, across the globe, and now they have to come and join us, and let's make the party bigger. So yeah, I think you are dead right. I think there should be a silver lining that although people might lose their jobs and get all these packages, we should try it out in the private sector, and the private sector really has to be part of the formula going forward. Yeah.
Absolutely. And look, that doesn't mean that government is not vitally important. In fact, going forward, your government is going to be an absolutely crucial aspect of where you go and how far you go. So we need to make sure that we retain the brightest and the best, or some of the brightest and the best, in the right positions, in slimmed down regulatory functions that focus on what absolutely has to be done. What we've seen in Botswana over the last 2 decades is a proliferation of what you could argue unnecessary roles. Sort of the focus on trade, for example, of how much more difficult it is to import goods than it used to be. There used to be a reliance on, I hate to say it, but the South African Bureau of Standards. Goods were checked, that they came through. Very few people had problems using the goods that were approved by the South African Bureau.
SABS, yeah.
So, so business, it just came across the border. Now, obviously, countries want sovereignty, but at what cost? Could that money be better spent? You've got incredibly talented people in the Bureau of Standards, but should they be working in labs in the private sector? Yeah. Do we, and again, these are some of the hard choices we have to make. I may want a car, but actually what we can afford is a bicycle for this one, because we need the car to be to transport something else, if you see what I mean.
Let me give you a practical example of this. That happened to me, by the way, one of the companies that we have interest in. So we're trying to do this project in the mining sector, and the products emanates from Australia. So we wanted to effect the projects, and the client said we wanted to be certified, which is fine. Certification means we go to Botswana Bureau of Standards. And as you rightly said, Botswana Bureau of Standards said, now we have to go through the whole process of certification. But we said, but in Australia is certified, and now it's already being used in South Africa. But they say they need to do their own certification. And Nick, right now it's months, delays, just to get the product into action and get productivity going, because we have to go through this reinventing the wheel. If they've got international standards. I'm sure Australia is. I'm sure SABS is. So why do we need to go through months? This is an example of what we do here in Botswana, as you said, just duplicating things.
I would like to pick up on 2 sides of that. First, the how that echoes across all the interviews we did. So we interviewed the successful company, many of the successful companies here, and what I think was, and we had those stories across the board, but it's not just the Bureau of Standards. The qualifications, certification of courses. Interviewed a very aggressive online training, and sort of the future of where we want to go, or where Botswana wants to go. And they're expanding into West Africa, English speaking West Africa. There's a respect for Botswana, and for sort of that Botswana is straight, so the qualifications are legitimate and the institutions can be trusted. It took them over a year or more to try and get one of their courses certified.
Yeah.
And they're actually, when we spoke to them last, they were actually looking to establish in Ghana rather than offer it from here,
from
Can you imagine that? Sort of this is the logic of what we want.
Yeah.
Of what is wanted. You outsource we're an outsource hub. So there's regulations, but I think coming back to sort of again where I think we need to refocus. Your story of certification is incredibly wasteful, and is exactly why businesses here are sort of say to us, I'm not sure if I'd establish here. If I could do it all over again, I'd much rather be in Mauritius maybe, or Kenya, or hub out of Joburg. But if you look at there is a huge role for control at the borders for counterfeit goods. People are dying because we have fake drugs. So, there's still a role for government, but why are you wasting your time on certifying something that's already certified in Australia? Use that to keep people dying. There's a lot of rethinking that can be done. And, and as a business, what do? You focus on what your company needs to survive, where you need to thrive, and sometimes you just can't do things that you want to do. Government needs to adopt that mindset.
Yeah.
And there are a range of areas that need to move.
All right. Let's go to one of the most worrisome area in what's happening in Botswana right now, and it's been very topical even in Parliament of late, where there was an approval of a loan from Africa Development Bank and OPEC. I think some almost 7 billion pula worth, but $304 million from ADB and the rest from OPEC. So, having traveled in Africa and worked across Africa, one of the biggest headaches for Kenya, for Ghana, for all other countries is debt. If you look at the graph that was published recently, and I think I sent you the report from eConsult, the graph around net financial assets for government. If you look at debts and revenue, they're just going in opposite directions. There's almost an exponential growth in debt when revenue is going the other way. This is from a Botswana that in 2019 or 2015 we had 42 billion pula in the GIA, and as far as 1998, we had 105% in terms of percentage assets relative to GDP. So we come from a very, very good base, and that just has been dropping and dropping and dropping. So I just wanted you to talk about the potential for debt trap, and how do you see that?
No, it's startling, and as you say, those figures say it all. The crucial thing here about debt is are you borrowing to invest and to grow, or are you borrowing because you have to, because your expenses are out of control relative to your revenue? And I think we know the answer to that. So if there are some, look, there is breathing space in Botswana, or for Botswana. The level of debt is significantly below several, many of neighboring countries. I think South Africa's about 67%. Namibia, it's higher. Yeah. If you look at Kenya, again up in the well above Botswana. And Mauritius, debt to GDP is, I think, around between 70 and 80%. I can't remember the exact numbers.
Okay.
But the key thing here is, a loan is very different depending on the purposes, and this is a crisis loan. So if you're using it to adjust, fine. If you're using it just to put off the inevitable, then this is money wasted. Now, you do, again, there's breathing space if you look at your debt repayments. They're a minimal part of your budget. And they are, those debt repayments are crippling other countries. If you look at what's happening in Zambia, they actually can't spend money on anything but debt repayment. So Botswana is a long way away from that.
Okay.
So you've got wiggle room, but this is wrong in the sense that this should be to support adjustment rather than, support your overdraft and keep spending money on the things you like rather than rationalizing your expenditure. There is no, as I say, there's no way out.
Yeah.
So, the macroeconomic figures are one thing, and their Botswana is okay in borrowing, but it's totally not the way to go because of it looks to me more like supporting expenditure that you can't afford rather than investing in a new structure of the economy.
Absolutely, because I think if I'm right, and I think I'm right, that the current borrowings are really to finance recurrent budgets. This is going back to the salary bills and the government expenses. And now we're talking about 34% now, according to experts, in terms of where our public debt sits, with Botswana's limit being 40%, which has obviously gone very well in terms of our ratings and stability and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, an investment will be needed. For you to grow, you will need investment, and much of that will have to come from government. Expanding the solar energy. There's going to have to be a lot of infrastructure backing. They're making sure that you continue with your infrastructure and infrastructure expansion, so that you reduce the cost of transport even more, especially sort of access to markets in sort of the rest of Africa. But that's very different to borrowing money to pay wages.
Yeah. So the good news is that Botswana still has some room, isn't it? But the big caution is that whatever is being borrowed should be used for programs that restructure the economy. For obviously you're talking ROI and stuff like that. That's really the message here, isn't it? That's
and retrenchment, realignment. Sort of because the reality is that, the supply side and the supply constraints need to be tackled. Now, some of them can be tackled through policy, which is very cheap. But, others, sort of your infrastructure for IT, you need to have much, much faster, better connectivity across the board. You need to start instead of running away from the rest of Southern Africa or trying to keep it out, you need to look at ways that you can become symbiotically linked to take advantage of the fact that Johannesburg is a 50-minute plane journey from you, rather than see it as a problem.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of expenditure realignment, but it's the supply supply constraints need to be reduced, but you don't do that by just spending money on wages.
Absolutely. Now then, the next one, and we are talking about, these are very recent interventions, as we discussed before the podcast, that government, we got the borrowing. Now, one of the latest developments in the last 2 or 3 weeks was this the government move to accelerate the controlled depreciation of the pula to minimize, foreign reserves losses. So the Minister of Finance even went to Parliament to explain, because there's a big worry about this devaluation, or as you'll define it a bit more in terms of what it means with regard to the PEG system that we use, the crawling PEG system that we use to manage our foreign exchange frameworks. So that's a big worry. But obviously, government is trying to excite competitiveness of our economy in terms of trying to reduce the value of the pula a little bit, which makes a lot of sense to me. But you economists always confuse us, when
That's our job. That's our job. That's what we're paid for. We confuse you, then explain it, and charge you for both.
I'm saying this because your guru, Michael Potter, when he was here in 2012, he was saying that he doesn't support devaluation at all,
Right.
But at the same time, there's always a debate that Botswana's, high value pooler, it's actually to the interest of the elite because, the elite want to keep, go to South Africa, go for holidays, and you sound all good, but at the expense of industrialization. So, I stand to be corrected, but I actually support the devaluation just because I do not believe that Botswana can industrialize without a strong manufacturing sector. This is just my two tables non-economist type view. So I'm just interested in your view that is this move a good one? I know Keith feels different. He actually even went to the extent that this should be reversed. So jump into the bandwagon. What do you think?
Absolutely. And I'd love to disagree with Keith, but I don't think I can on this. But I think there are two aspects. That's the one is the split between the spread between the how this is being dealt with. The implementation of it is not what you would welcome. But let's look at devaluation itself. The devaluation is inevitable in Botswana because the value of what you produce and export is going down. So there is a difference between devaluation as just a reflection of your economy, your assets, so that there is an inevitability about it. So I'm not saying that if with the massive reduction in the value of your diamond wealth, there should be a devaluation just because of gravity.
Yeah.
But devaluation as a tool, and I would agree with you that. Well, I would say that your industrialization. There's also industrialization without smokestacks, as the World Bank has called it, which is sort of services. Yeah, exactly. But the importance of diversifying into sort of higher value added activities, whatever they may be, is not what you want to do. It's absolutely what has to happen. But if you look at the episode of devaluation in, when was it, 2004? Mm-hmm. I was here at the time and thought this must be right. So I was
2005, yeah.
Yeah, I was proved wrong. Within 2 years, inflation had eroded any gain in terms of price competitiveness. Things in Botswana just increased in price. So I, as an exporter, had no additional competitive edge. If you look at the response from manufacturing and agriculture, there was no structural shift. There was no significant boost in exports beyond the AGOA blip. That's one of the things that I think took time to wash out. We did see an increase in exports, but it was that short-lived boost of exports under the AGOA. How bitterly ironic. How big this today. But this comes back to the broader theme of what we are talking about. That the challenge was devaluation resulted in no supply response or limited supply response for two reasons. One is that government carried on spending as it did. So you're stoking inflationary pressure. For devaluation to result in actually reducing your costs, you also have to compress your government expenditure.
Yeah.
You have to reduce that. But also the supply side that the private sector have been talking about since I arrived in Botswana and since I come back to Botswana from elsewhere, that, we have skill shortages. Mm-hmm. We have high costs of doing business. We have a lot of red tape in the border. We have a lot of regulatory issues. And if anything, government has been laying on more. There's more red tape. There are more regulatory authorities. There are more barriers. The borders are thicker. The challenges to getting skills. So how will if a devaluation didn't work in 2004, 2005, when actually it was the private sector had easier options to expand. How is it going to work now? Now, again, if it's accompanied with a significant reduction in fiscal expenditure, then maybe that price competitiveness will remain because we won't see it inflated away. But it's the supply side. It's your supply side constraints. And I feel almost embarrassed saying this because this is something that I suppose just because your golf instructor tells you your mid-range game is not good and has been saying it to you for 20 years doesn't mean your golf instructor is wrong.
Yeah.
But so I do not think that the devaluation will work without those two vital issues: reduced fiscal expenditure so inflation doesn't creep through, and removing that red tape and barriers so that you do actually see a supply response.
Okay, so it's a little bit more complex than just seeing its outward like that devaluation. It means inflation is going to creep in, imports are going to, because that's the big cry from the public that now it's going to be very costly to import material. We are a very importing country from South Africa, from Zambia and so forth. So it's not but I like your connection to fiscal discipline and also so it's a restructuring of the entire economy. It has to go along with other,
And let's come back to that crucial issue you mentioned about how import dependent our value addition is. So if you're going to devalue, you're increasing your costs. But then can you? This is why it comes back to those issues of trade facilitation. So you've devalued the currency, so your imported inputs are more expensive. But I've radically invested in trade facilitation, so it comes across the border immediately. I can now move to if I can be assured that I can source without delay from neighboring countries, I reduce my costs. So that's what I mean. You have to encourage. So that's where we are. There are so many costs that could be reduced. There's so much time that could be saved that you could counteract to an extent that increase in costs on your imported goods by making your supply chain much, much more lean and efficient.
Okay. No, it's very clear. Now let's get into another, which is Botswana's headache for so many years, the issue of diversification. And as a trade economist, we discussed earlier how countries have broken through to high income because we talked about Hong Kong, trade. Singapore was trade. I think UAE largely was trade. So how the hell can Botswana stars? I mean, we've got this Africa,
ASBA,
which is I think it was enacted in 2012. I'm like, where are the benefits, to now? But it's a bit of a promise for Africa, obviously. But let's talk about how, through leverage in trade, Botswana can now fully diversify, which is, according to the president and his team, this is non-negotiable. This is a must happen. And I'd just like to hear your views as to when it happens, what are the levers that Botswana can do?
Well, it has to happen. So there's no doubt about it. Look, I think one of the challenges for Botswana is what to learn from, who to learn from. Sort of we were talking about Ethiopia, not a model that Botswana can draw on. Over 100, however many million people, it's left my mind now. Location is also crucial. Hong Kong, Singapore benefited from their neighborhood. A country I worked in for a very long time, Rwanda, bizarrely, the benefited hugely from its location economically as a distribution hub to the DRC and surrounding countries. It really took advantage of that. So the challenge for Botswana is that it is geographically and economically distant. and it is small and it is expensive to move things around. Yeah. But then let's look at what we do have, and you do have some remarkable companies, operate from Flowtech, the LED. You've got the citrus, Celebi.
Yeah.
Sort of there are some remarkable firm level stories. And again, there are advantages to Botswana being a place where people are happy to live. They identify with it. The taxes are acceptable. Things can happen. So I think one of a response to you on this is, are you looking after the manufacturing and the service leaders that you currently have? Mm-hmm. And there is a resounding, not really. Well,
is that real?
Real, Nick. Right. There's a resounding, not really. Again, we spoke earlier about, sort of the response of the companies that we interviewed. Nearly to a firm, when I asked them, you're successful. Would you relocate to Botswana, or if you were to start again, would you establish in Botswana right now? And I can't remember one saying yes.
Really?
And what we're seeing is that sort of certain companies they're growing in Botswana, but then accessing the Zambian market, accessing the DRC market, you're seeing them establish in Joburg.
Really? When Botswana is close.
When Botswana is closer, they're actually looking to again, partly the subsidies, which is a tricky issue, but the way that the South African government facilitates their investment and their operation. So it's, I think there's an awful lot that can be done, and I think there are. But look, let's also recognize the success of, and I know it's not without some controversy, but the success of the Celebi citrus.
Okay.
It shows that that action by government can support, the productive development. Again, the issue of making your SEZs work. SEZs. Special economic zone to support. And I think there's some very interesting analysis coming out of what is increasingly being called SEZ Phase 3 or SEZ 3, which I think is particularly appropriate to Botswana. So if you think of the original special economic zones, they were little more than tax giveaways.
Yeah.
Then the second SEZs were much more about sort of trying to link and create clusters within the SEZ so that you can increase efficiency. Now what we're seeing, and there's one of the leading examples is in Kenya, where the approach is actually that to reflecting the fact that several of these SEZs failed because of their distance. But not just their geographic distance, but their social distance. So in Kenya now, what you have is this Special Economic Zone 3, which recognizes the fact that you can't just send, if you think of the mining in South Africa, when men from Lesotho and KwaZulu-Natal moved to Johannesburg with the families back at home, the social disruption that caused. The new generation are taking a much less fiscal tax incentive approach, a much more, we need an integrated solution. So if we're building an SEZ or we're going to create economic activity here, where does that investment from government come? We need a school.
Mm-hmm.
We need a holistic approach. And if you think of where Botswana may need to sort of see economic activity develop, there are some interesting models out there that are zone specific. And Kenya is up and running and well worth a visit. is my understanding.
Kenya model.
We
Based in Nairobi, was it? Is it Nairobi?
No, it's I wish I no that it's actually quite geographically distant. If I remember, we just finished the project, but I wasn't leading it.
Okay.
I will send you the work on this for you.
Please, that would make very great if you can do that. Yeah.
But so I think there's that is where borrowing to invest may be worthwhile. But I think also one of the things that needs to happen is a much more effective public-private dialogue, but benchmarked on success stories like Mauritius. What is it that Mauritius is doing that your company, why are your companies now looking at that as something that's attractive? What are the logistics that you can, and the conditions within obviously a much larger economy such as South Africa, that it can offer? And sometimes you simply can't compete. And let's also be recognize that. And sometimes your private sector, the dialogue is just, I want you to pay me to produce. Well, that doesn't happen. Sorry, but a much more, sort of the dialogue that I witnessed in Rwanda was genuine. Again, sort of that's a government that is prepared to make mistakes. They did make some significant mistakes while I was there. They closed the border for the import of wheat for the beer factory. And actually, Rwanda doesn't grow the right wheat for beer.
They're trying to
how
own market. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean crazy. No, they wanted the beer producers there who were selling into the DRC to have more of a local impact.
Okay.
They closed the border and it was a disaster, but that lasted a week. Because they reversed it. If there's a learning function, and again, so we're coming back to how we harness that talent within government. Can we fail fast? Because we will fail.
Yeah.
We need to take Botswana needs to take a lot of risks, but it needs to not do it as it usually does, which is we've made a mistake, but we'll see. No, you fail fast, you learn, and you have effective dialogue. That's how I see it. I don't know, and that there are other investments in renewable energy that also significant opportunities for the country and for producers here. There's a lot of reform that's needed in the regulation of that. And again, what's nice about regulatory reform is that it's not the same as building a road.
Yeah,
it can be cheap, and the same with your trade facilitation. Reducing those costs. And again, don't absorb all of your talent in government, but make sure that talent is focusing on the right thing and is agile and learns its mistakes quickly.
I like that. The other thing that I like the way you were talking about Rwanda, and you got a huge population just next door in DRC as a leverage for their products. I've always said this, and I'll be interested in your comment because you are partly South African now. I always say we got to look at the regional demographics, and the area around Gauteng. That's the richest piece of estate in Africa per capita. Okay, you got the highest levels of middle class in Africa. Mm-hmm. You said it earlier. It is only 50 minutes flight from Gabs. It's only about 3 hours from Gabs, and I've said, I think I wrote an article about it in 1998 or something to say, why don't we just boost infrastructure, road and rail infrastructure between Gauteng and Gaborone? And as you said, Nick, lots and lots of manufacturers in Johannesburg area, they'll be very happy to relocate to Gaborone, obviously with the right conditions for the regulations and stuff like that, and actually trade back into South Africa as a major partner. So these are the things that, as you said, we've got to learn to experiment and spend on infrastructure. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you link up Gabs and Johannesburg and make Gabs a good service hub, manufacturing hub, and I think that can work. And we are leveraging Botswana's advantage of the peace, of the stability of trade unions and all that kind of stuff, which a lot of South Africans love. I don't know what your take is. As just as an example, to say you can actually look at your markets and see where's the concentration of buyers, of customers, and say, how do we access that market? Is it a crazy thought?
Not at all. But it's a risky one. Because remember, that sort of, but it depends on your mindset, your attitude, and your agility. You built that road, and there's every chance that in the same way you send more stuff down along it, you might also lose factories in Botswana because they are now fully exposed to competition in Joburg.
Correct. Yeah.
In Gauteng. But ask yourself the question, sort of, do you have a choice? Possibly, but you need to find a way of harnessing that economic hothouse. Okay? That there are a whole range of ways that you could do this. Where is look, you've got a lot of. I spoke to some very impressive young people who are dealing with the, creating e-government in Botswana and IT and the rest. But where is the, and it may be there, but I want to know why I do not have a huge number of disaster recovery sites, or maybe that's out of date now. I'm so old. Why are we not, with 50 minutes away from Gauteng, why do we not have some, software development, all of the IT industries? Why do they not have at least a floor? If you just took one floor of every building from Gauteng and moved it across to Gaborone, we would be fine. And again, what you would witness it was relentless, the time I spent in Rwanda. You as a ministry was set a task and you reported back every month on where are we on this? Why is it not happening? What is the question? Do you need more resources? Do I need to fly? Paul Kagame flew to, I don't know if I should. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Paul Kagame flew to Johannesburg. This is the legend while I was there, because he was frustrated that MTN were not going to introduce, I think he called them blueberry services. Into Rwanda because Rwanda was too small a market. Now, the legend goes that he got on a plane and booked in a meeting with the CEO of MTN.
Absolutely.
Now, that may or may not be, that may be urban myth, but that was the culture.
Yeah.
The fact that no one questioned that he did it, that was the culture. Now, why not? I'm on a plane until it happens. And if you leave me after 2 years, I want to know why. And are we, and it comes back to that servicing the businesses that you have, are we constantly, or is Botswana constantly going to its key companies and saying, how is it going? Exactly. Are you happy?
Yeah.
Are they doing that? And I'm not sure they are.
Yeah. No, you're dead right. And then the last thing that we want to do is start losing, like you said, the citrus guys, the floor tech guys who already have upped their prices. We have wiring, Schoenberg, the one that do electrical harnessing, which those guys you don't want to lose. They should be right in the eyesight of the leaders. You've got, what other company can I think of, which we don't have lots of? But those are the companies that, just to give you an example, the owner of Choppies, they opened a new recycling plant just in the outskirts of Gaps a few years ago, and I was invited to attend. And he said part of the challenges and the red tape, they took 3 years to get an environmental assessment report. The other one with the citrus projects, one of the principals, one of the shareholders at the launch, he said, we have to spend 30 million pula just to get power to our area. And it's like, shouldn't we put in that in the expansion of the process and government? There are these examples, the messages that are all over. I can name a lot. Even the Nortex, one of the directors told me, she can't get a visa for the wife. So the wife has been here for 12 years, and she's just being taken from Peter to, that type of thing. So you're right. We got to have the leaders and Okasinya.
Yeah, sort of, I would hope that, sort of your top companies, that they are wined and dined at the expense of your government once a month. Yeah. And again, what a better way of spending, 30 million to establish an industry versus 30 million spent on salaries.
Yeah.
So there's a huge amount that can be done you need to change it so that if I come across a potential investor in Cape Town who's considering Gaborone or Botswana, the first thing they're going to do is speak to other businesses there. Yeah. Are those businesses saying, you must come here, it's great? That's the acid test. It's not a brochure. It's not a brochure. It's not another study, although do more studies because I need the one. But I am. Yeah. But it's, what are your businesses saying about doing business in Botswana?
Absolutely. The narrative. Yeah, 100%. We spend a bit of time on the trade, Nick, because I think it's one of the structural activities that need to be unlocked. And I think it's very important for the policy makers and the country at large to appreciate that trade and diversification is extremely critical to this movement. And I think the president, to be fair, has been...
Absolutely.
He's been saying all the right things around agility, failing. I mean, this country needs to learn to experiment, fail and move on and learn from that fail. Yes. And not just to close. Yeah, those are the things we need. Yeah. Let's move to our favorite friend, Trump. So
there we go.
Yeah, now from your from a trade perspective, because this obviously got AGOA, but obviously worryingly for Botswana is obviously the diamonds, which I think 90% of them go through the US, so that the huge worry about this 37% potential. And I know it's every week is announcing something with EU, with UK and so forth. So I just wanted to again get your take to what does this mean for Botswana? Is it another double whammy into already a very precarious situation, or is something that we can take advantage of? I don't know. And your take?
No, I mean it's not great, is it? You're being hit by the lab-grown diamonds. You've seen what you've seen, and then this comes along, and look, it's the what you want from your trade relations are certainty and equality with your competitors. And that is exactly what you're not getting. Yeah? There's a flip-flop around the tariffs. What tariffs are you going to pay? Or will it change? There've even been discussions about whether, diamonds should be free of tariffs with the USTR. Because the US doesn't have diamond mines, but it can, now it's very important in terms of lab grown. So I don't think we're going to get away with it. Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. But yeah, look, you're paying 37%. You've got Canada paying 20%. You've got South Africa paying 30%. You've got, where are we? I was just looking these up. India, 26%. Israel, 17%. The EU will be... I mean, this is exactly what you don't want, especially for an industry that requires long-term investment. So, this is just in terms of adding to the already the structural, the existential threat of lab-grown diamonds. It's really dreadful, and it's the that's not a particularly scientific term, is it? Dreadful. but you know, it is not good. Look, I think also it's noticeable though that in terms of the additional, you know, to a certain extent, this impact is additional to the challenges in the US market, where if I remember rightly, it's one of the fastest growing markets for lab grown diamonds. So, you know, you were losing it rapidly anyway. But, you know, sort of the impact on, you know, a key consumer, you know, the US is a major market for diamonds. So you're only going to see more pain. And again, you know, Botswana, I think where it does hurt, it's going to continue that pain in terms of the value added, because, you know, it seems to be that it's only going to be the larger, you know, firstly that it's the larger processed diamonds that, you know, are going to get into the States. So I think, you know, it's exactly what you don't want to happen right now. But you know, sort of again, you know, and it just accelerates the need to move into this, you know, sort of the organic and social diamond. You know, the you know, natural. If you think of your natural diamond as an organic one, you know, we just need to accelerate on the branding, the promotion. But these contribute to an already very, very damaged or under threat sector, and the fact that Botswana is paying amongst the highest tariffs on this, even though South Africa, it beggars belief. You know, and look, there are the other aspect of the Trump tariffs. Again, you know, sort of the indirect effect on our SACU partners is something that I think we needs to be processed. What is it that if about 20% of revenue comes from the SACU base?
The SACU revenues,
Yeah, and if you look at sort of the, you know, so I think coming back to the discussion on the fiscal side, if you think that, you know, okay, Lesotho is a tiny part of the SACU economy, but you're looking at tens of thousands of jobs going. South Africa is going to be facing 30% tariffs, and it's already seeing impact on its, you know, it's going to see a big impact on its exports to the States from this. You're going to see the economy, you know, SACU as a whole is going to shrink. You're going to see imports decline, and you're going to see the SACU revenue shrinking. So, you know, everything, you know, that's quite a combination of punches.
It's not a double whammy; it's a multiple whammies.
You know, so if you got a right hook, left hook, and uppercut. So, you know, and those, it will be interesting to see what happens with the SACU revenues next year. I think that's going to be a nasty surprise as well.
Yeah, I have to be honest, I didn't think about that one. You're right, because like you said, the SACU partners had been hit as well simultaneously, and a huge impact on Botswana, which right now the SACU proceeds are part of our savior, you know, in terms of fiscal.
Yeah. So be careful how you treat your neighbors. That you treat them as enemies. You might, if you share a wall, you know, always try and maintain good relations.
There's another angle to this one, Nick, around the, you know, like you said, so many things are moving, so many moving parts. In the meantime, we're talking about positioning natural diamonds. Our president is talking lately about how, you know, DBS has stockpiled 10 million carats since last year. And he was coming very strong to say those need to be sold, you know, come rain or shine. And at the same time, and also sort of, you know, putting De Beers on the spot to say they actually are failing to market and sell our natural diamonds, so to speak. But he said this De Beers is getting sold. Is getting sold, and the estimation is that by end of this year we might know who the final owner would be. And there's talk that Botswana is also putting its own bid. As you know, it's got 15% in De Beers. So that also brings another angle, because if Botswana is able to secure majority stake in De Beers, maybe it can use this instrument, for lack of a better word, as part of this natural diamonds drive, because De Beers has a history of doing that relatively well. So I just your comment on that in terms of positioning of, you got the tariffs, and then we've got this issue of unsold diamonds because of the left growns and all other dimensions, like China deciding to go for gold in terms of investment instead of diamonds, and all these shifts that are happening. So I don't know what your thoughts are. I learned the PS story.
This is now, I think, these are very challenging decisions and issues in the sense, are you talking about a fire sale when you say get rid of the stock? Does it damage the longer term? Or, it makes sense to sell everything if you think the price is going to collapse in a year's time. But it doesn't make sense then to buy into a company that's, to take a majority share in something that you think that the price is falling. Yeah. Look, I think the key challenge here is, the ability to actually engineer and create that natural diamonds brand. And I know relations have been strained, but De Beers did do an amazing job of managing the diamond market. They do have a pretty strong track record, but like with any investment, that the past is no predictor of the future.
Yeah.
And to go beyond that, I would feel uncomfortable to talk on the diamond market specifically as not an area where I have expertise.
Yeah.
But and I have to say that what I have been seeing is that even those that have expertise are not necessarily speaking with one voice. So this could be a moment where Botswana gets a much bigger piece of the action at a low price. It may also be where they're investing money in something that doesn't have the kind of returns that it did in the past. So beyond that, I would be uncomfortable.
Very, 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 very uncertain and very volatile and very times for the country. And you have to feel our principals who are trying to juggle all this on a weekly basis.
Would you want to be a minister right now? I'm not sure. I'm not sure I would.
We definitely wish them all the best. On a final, as we get to closure, Nick, this is a question that's now captures your economics from an Africa perspective, with Botswana at the microcosm type level. To say, I always say you've got your India, which is 1.4 billion people, China about the same, Africa about 1.3 billion. So basically we are, almost on the same par in terms of population. And I was reading this article the other day that more babies are born every day in Nigeria compared to the whole of Western Europe. Yes. So we are talking about a very huge young population by 2050 out of Africa, with this 60 to 70% a year. So what I wanted to just challenge as we finish is that from your perspective, China, and this is not just economics, it's social economy, where China has managed to put, hundreds and hundreds of millions of people within a few decades from poverty to middle class. India, in the last couple of decades, has done the same thing. And I just wanted to, in the context of Botswana and Africa, to say, what is our fundamental challenge that restricts our continent from getting to the next level. I mean, technology has been democratized. I mean, these guys used a lot of technology. Yeah. The processes, as I read, read philosophy and economy, these ideas are not new. The templates are there for everybody, for the leaders. There's no more secret. What Singapore did, what Taiwan did, what Finland did, is all there for everybody. So we can't now start saying we are actually, we run out of ideas because they're evolving every time. Yeah. So the challenge is what's your take as your final punch on this checks to say, what is our African, having worked in Africa now for a couple of decades?
I think I voted with my feet on this one. I see the fundamental challenge of Africa is its fragmentation and its marginalization. That we have tiny economies next to big ones and that they don't seek to benefit from each other. We do not share skills. We do not share resources, sensibly. We even, I think for me, in some cases, we have near famine on one side of the border and food rotting on the other, because of jealously keeping what we have and not thinking how can we collectively make this work. I came to Botswana to work for SADC, the Southern African Development Community. I was actually an employee of SADC. Because unless and until Africa learns to integrate properly, deal with this defragment, it cannot thrive. But let us also recognize the huge challenges of trying to make that happen. It took a millennia of conflict and the biggest war that we've ever seen for Europe to realize that it actually needed to work together.
And together.
It's an awful lot to ask, but I think I don't see much by way of immediate economic opportunities in the African continental free trade area yet. But what I see is the massive opportunity to bring the larger economies, South Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, Egypt, together to then generate enough growth and to pull countries together. If you look at the automotive sector in South Africa, it does have important lessons from us. We're harnessing global markets, drawing in wiring from Botswana, leather from Lesotho. We can do it. And that is, to me, a vignette or an inspiration for how we need to think. We can't have, but we can't have everything within each border. But together, that can work. You can have the critical maths to do it. But I do not underestimate I've been working on this for 25, 30 years. And, there are some ridiculous, how can I put it? In East Africa, I did a lot of work, a huge amount of work looking at trade facilitation. And actually, if you look at customs arrangements within the East African community, it has revolutionized. It's no recognition from what it was. But the presidents don't talk to each other, so they close the borders. So there's been 15, 20 years investment in thinning the borders, and then our politicians go, right, no. It's going to take time, but I do not. We have to learn to come together, and not. It's not a political or social. It's a purely economic. We need to defragment our economies.
No, absolutely. One of the most exciting things with the previous government in Botswana, which I thought was something in the right direction, was when the previous president declared that Botswana and Namibia will no longer have to use passports. So now we use ID cards just to cross the border. And I was looking at from an economist, say, when you look at Namibia and Botswana, same population, huge mass about if you double up the population, you're talking over 4 million, which becomes a sizable market. And I just thought they would take it to the next level in terms of now, synchronizing everything so that trade can, like you said, we just, we need each other. But we behave like we overplay this sovereign thing of when we can actually get a lot more by breaking up this board. So I was looking forward to this in terms of Namibia and Botswana, because relative to peaceful, laid back type of people, and why can we get closer?
But this is, I couldn't agree more. But I will add that the economic impact is only going to come when we learn South Africa, Botswana, Namibia to actually play together properly to pool, because 4 million is still not enough.
True.
6 million is still not enough. What is enough, I can't tell you.
Yeah.
But sort of if you're 2 million, you need again, automotives, IT, some of the plastics and packaging. This is you need to look at every sector and say, how do I integrate within the broader economy so that I can do things now that I couldn't do on my own.
Okay.
And one final thing that I think is part of this and crucial from a business perspective. If Africa is to grow, you need to encourage or enable mergers, acquisitions, takeovers. You need to have a much more aggressive private sector that where you allow the best to thrive and to grow through acquisition. Sort of if you look at the performance at company level, there's some fantastic work done last decade where the average performance of a company in Mozambique, for example, was 1/3 the efficiency of the frontier company.
Really?
So if you had that frontier company running the other companies in its sector, you would see a tripling in economic activity. Now, again, a question is, why do we not see this absorption, this takeover? And again, I would argue it's partly that we're very comfortable and protected in our little markets and in our little sectors. We really need the full force of competition, but enable good companies to grow. And that does mean that we need sort of those others may need to be absorbed. But at the company level, there's a huge variety. Why are we not seeing the better run companies growing faster than they are and absorbing those that are not? That's and I think that has to come down to a need for business law reform, and to rethink the whole of business law in terms of mergers, acquisitions, etc.
Excellent. Now, as we wrap up, anything that we missed that you like to, again, imagine that you are the Minister of Finance for Botswana. Anything that you think is highly important, just on a final note for your Botswana's sake?
I know I will kick myself and remember a key message in once we stop this, but I do think the need to take risks, the need to learn, fail fast, reassess, work in an integrated way to keep the business that you have. And look at your entire support to a business sector in an integrated manner. Looking at those SEZ3s to see what it can do for you, benchmarking together with your private sector on a country that you think you can learn from. Mauritius, you want hard targets that are driven relentlessly, but know when to stop. I think it's more. It's that is what is going to make the difference. We know what needs to be done. It's doing it that is going to be the single most difficult thing.
Yeah. No, thanks, Nick. I think very good wisdom there for our leaders, and I 100% agree with you. I don't like to contaminate that. Now, as we usually, when you come to the end of the podcast, we just like you to share any books that have make a difference to your life, whether in your area or just generally that their audiences really love these books recommendation. We're hoping to get more Africans reading.
Yeah, no, totally. Look, I think some of the work that has deeply influenced me was from my supervisor, Paul Collier.
Okay.
I think he blends and a lot of the issues I've been discussing about how you manage if you're a left behind country. Mm-hmm. His recent work resonates very much with me in terms of that failing fast, the learning.
Okay.
So I think the economics of the left behind is a recent book for me. But in terms of
economics of
Paul Collier, the economics of the left behind.
Okay. Economics of the left behind. When you say you're a supervisor at Oxford, where was he?
Yes, for my supervisor, he was supervisor for my PhD.
Okay.
But I wanted to be, so he has been the Center for the Study of African Economies has been was a constant influence.
Okay.
And again, there are some. Most of my influences come from sector level studies. Mm-hmm. I'm a dreadful. I don't read textbooks so much as I'll read studies on enterprise surveys. Sort of there are. I think what would be very interesting there's some work out recently on Botswana on SME competitiveness.
Okay.
That I think is well worth digging into. Okay. You've got the UNDP, I think, poverty profile of Botswana. But hang on, this isn't very inspirational, is it? Look, I'm not inspirational. I'm a
practical economist, isn't it?
I'm a quants economist designing programs to have impact on trade. But I will reflect on that. I feel I really let you down.
No, not at all. I mean, especially it's not just me, it's the audience. They love all these books. I mean, we've got different guests coming from different areas, so they even like ones from economics. So I like that one around poverty from the NDP. Was it something of late? Was it something of late?
What I will do, it's actually we used it a lot for the study on trade and sustainable development that we did, including Botswana. I'll share with you links some of these.
I'll read up, appreciate.
Then we can show you your listeners may be interested in that work, looking at the link between trade and sustainable development. I'll share that link. And let me reflect on that. But I think a thinker that has deeply influenced me beside the CSA was Krugman. Why I liked Paul Krugman was that he was technically very rigorous, but understood nuance.
Okay.
Understood that where you started from would affect where you go. And if I could have a criticism of the economics I grew up with, it was as though history didn't matter.
Yeah.
And Krugman was one of those who introduced history into trade economics.
Okay.
So that was a big influence to me. But I will reflect on that.
No, great stuff. No, Nick.
I need to go back to school.
Yeah. No, my man, it's been such a pleasure. Thanks very much for making time. I know it's taken us quite maybe 2 months or so to get our thing going.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate it and enjoy the sunshine and the warm weather in Cyprus. And I'm sure we'll meet the windy Cape Town soon.
I will be. No, it's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you very much.
Keep well, my man. Cheers there. Bye.